Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And now that it's not 5 in the morning, there's been more time to take in everything that's going on with this UFC welterweight title picture. And there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to discuss. We might actually be, I don't want to say exposing some fighters here, but we're about to find out what some of these fighters are made of, you know what I'm saying? And this is going to be probably a longer video because we've got quite a bit to talk about with this interesting scenario that sort of happened overnight. Last night, Darren Till started tweeting it. That's to the surprise of everybody, including the champion Tyron Woodley. And Darren Till tweeted like, yo, Tyron, accept the fight. Tyron Woodley's like, accept what fight? To my knowledge, I'm still about to smash Quintin. You lose, you need to coordinate your ass whoopings better. So Tyron Woodley was even surprised, like, what fight are you talking about? Kobe responded and said, or actually Darren Till responded and said, Kobe's out, I'm in, accept the fight. And now we're getting reports that the UFC is considering stripping Colby Covington and booking the Woodley vs. Till title fight, which seems to be what Darren Till was talking about. Now, it's still unclear exactly what's got Colby Covington out of the fight. A lot of us are assuming injury because Colby Covington just won his title, I believe, this June. Like last month, he just won the interim welterweight strap. So for him to already be possibly getting stripped and skipped by Darren Till, this is out of left field. I mean, Tyron Woodley, whenever he won his belt, he went on to defend it 3 more times and fought 4 title fights in a 12-month span. But now, we're approaching almost, I believe, a year since Tyron Woodley's last title fight, if I'm not mistaken. I actually have that information we'll get to, but either way. So with that being said, Tyron Woodley's definitely going to have to defend that belt sooner rather than later, unless we're going to get an interim title, which we already had with Colby Covington, or if Tyron Woodley's going to get stripped. So why I say that is because since we've already had that interim title fight, if Tyron Woodley doesn't accept one of these fights with Darren Till, or even if that fight doesn't make sense, whoever else the UFC offers, Tyron Woodley, he doesn't have much leverage left. You know what I'm saying? At first, he could say, I defended my belt 3 times in a year. I fought 4 title fights in a year. Now we're approaching like 1 year without him defending that belt. So people are probably ready to see that welterweight strap moving. Tyron Woodley was healing up from an injury, I believe a labrum tear, but he himself said he was almost ready to come back when the UFC booked Colby Covington versus Rafael dos Anjos, which is why a lot of people felt like the UFC shouldn't even have made that interim title fight. They're like, you got Woodley saying he's likely to come back in August. Why make a title fight in June? And he's going to be back 2 months later. Why even make an interim title fight? But the UFC wasn't 100% clear when Woodley was coming back. I believe Dana White said he had a doctor's note that said Woodley might be out even longer. So they went ahead with the interim title fight. Now that Colby's the interim champion after beating Rafael dos Anjos, something's happened to him. And if it's an injury, man, it might be a pretty significant injury. It might be just some personal stuff. I don't know what it is, but this is just really surprising because Colby Covington just won the belt, and even if he was injured in his last fight, or even if he slipped on a fucking banana peel or tripped on a wire, he would probably have time to come back by the end of the year. I mean, we've still got 4.5 months left until December. So Colby would have had probably a month and a half to heal up, still get a full training camp, and fight Tyron Woodley at the end of the year if that was what was necessary. But it looks like with Colby Covington either being injured or whatever reason he's out, the UFC is likely or looking at the possibility of stripping him and booking Darren Till versus Tyron Woodley, kind of like we saw in the lightweight division. We had an interim champion, Tony Ferguson. He tripped on a wire, got injured, and so they just stripped him and booked Quintin to face Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, Quintin didn't get booked in the fight. He ended up replacing the injured Tony Ferguson, but eventually he fought for an undisputed title. Tony Ferguson was stripped of his title. Conor McGregor was stripped of his title. Khabib Nurmagomedov is now the undisputed champion, and there's no interim champion. So we have seen an interim champion stripped actually pretty recently in order to, it looks like, make the division keep rolling. So if Colby got stripped here, I mean, it would be, you know, I don't think there'd be too many people riling up behind Colby like, poor Colby, you know what I'm saying, just because of who he is. But at the same time, it would still be interesting. Now, with all of that being said, some people feel like Darren Till does not deserve a title shot versus Tyron Woodley. Now, yeah, he's technically the #1 or #2 contender, but in his last performance, just like when people say Tyron Woodley's fights are boring, like, and it's funny because the people who say Tyron Woodley's fights are boring, they kind of contradict themselves here. And I caught that on a live stream. Darren Till's talking about fighting with Tyron Woodley, but we've heard Tyron Woodley possibly wanting money fights. And that's where this video is going to go into, because really, we got to talk about Nick Diaz. This video is really going to get into Nick Diaz. That's someone I got to talk about this video. He just came out, I believe, a week ago and called out any champion at any weight class, and now the welterweight champion's available. So we got to see if Nick Diaz is going to keep that same energy, or maybe duck his motherfucking taco from Tyron Woodley, because that's a very real possibility. Some people already feel like Nick Diaz or Nate Diaz has somewhat ducked Tyron Woodley. And that's just fans. You can't blame fans for feeling how they're going to feel. But when you look at Tyron Woodley, who's been a champion, a lot of the times, whenever you're a money fight, you try and come back and fight the champion, possibly win the belt. But if it's a fight you might not win, you might not take that fight. We saw none of these guys who are money fights have wanted to fight Tyron Woodley. GSP, Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz, Conor McGregor. None of these guys who, and Conor McGregor, he could make history. It's not about who the fighter is. It's not about, oh, Tyron Woodley's boring, so they don't want to fight him. That's not the fucking case. You can use that as an excuse if you want. It's not because Tyron Woodley's not a big enough name. No, no, no. He's the champion. That automatically puts him in contention for a super fight. And let me explain why. Eddie Alvarez wasn't the biggest name. You know why Conor McGregor fought him? To become the champ. That was history. Fighting for 3 titles. Now, with that being said, guess what fighting Tyron Woodley would be? History for Conor McGregor. That would be a fight where you're fighting for your 3rd title. When you fought Eddie Alvarez, you were fighting for your 2nd title. It was history. It didn't matter who was the champion. It could have been RDA. It could have been Eddie Alvarez. Conor McGregor just wanted that 2nd belt. Now, if Conor McGregor just wanted that 3rd belt, he could fight Tyron Woodley. But it doesn't look like that's the route Conor McGregor's going to be going. It doesn't look like the Woodley route is the route any of these guys are going to be going. George St. Pierre didn't go the Woodley route. He went the Bisping, and now we'll see what happens route. I might fight Conor. I might fight Habib. Who knows? I might fight Silva. We don't know where Silva's going or where GSP's going to be fighting next. But it doesn't look like he wants to fight Tyron Woodley for whatever reason. All these guys have a good excuse. Oh, it's about the stock market. It's about this. It's about, yeah, it is what it is. A lot of fighters don't want to fight Tyron Woodley, and I know people don't like to hear that, but it's just facts. Now, with that being said, that's where Nick Diaz comes into the picture, because Nick Diaz just came out last week and said, I want to fight. He called out Daniel Cormier, of all people, the light heavyweight and heavyweight champion. And he said, I want to fight any champion. I actually got it for you. This is what he had to say. Here's Nick Diaz's, what he had to say. And I might be skipping around a little here because I did have some more to say on the Tyron Woodley thing. Actually, yeah, we're going to get to Nick Diaz in a second. Real quick, before we let's talk about Darren Till getting this title shot, because a lot of people don't believe Darren Till deserves the title shot, and that's really where Nick Diaz comes into play. Because now, if Colby Covington doesn't get the title shot, the question is who does. Darren Till, it looks like, is who the UFC is offering the fight to, and so you have some people saying, well, Tyron Woodley, he's not taking the fight with Darren Till. Is he ducking Darren Till? Why wouldn't he fight Darren Till? Is it because he wants a money fight? We've heard Tyron Woodley talk about a legacy fight, money fight, and all of that before, so people say, Tyron Woodley doesn't deserve a money fight. He's a boring fighter. And so that's where people start to contradict themselves. Because in Darren Till's last performance versus Wonder Boy, a lot of people felt like it was a boring fight. So you cannot in one breath say, Tyron Woodley doesn't deserve a money fight because he's boring, and then give me the same excuse, Darren Till does deserve a title shot even though he had a boring fight. It's the same thing. You can't use somebody's boring performance as a reason they don't get an opportunity and then say, oh, it doesn't matter, Darren Till had a boring performance, give him an opportunity. You're contradicting yourself there. So with that being said, if not Darren Till, who else is there? Colby Covington, he's injured. So if not Colby Covington or Darren Till, who's left? Kamaru Usman. He said he broke both of his hands, and I don't think a lot of fans are going to come out and say, all right, instead of Nick Diaz, give us Kamaru Usman. And now this is where Nick Diaz comes into question, comes into play. Because now it looks like Tyron Woodley needs an opponent. Tyron Woodley's the welterweight champion. He's ready to come back and fight, it seems like. He was going to be fighting Colby sooner rather than later if Colby didn't have this setback. So now, if not Colby Covington and Darren Till, on top of not having the most entertaining performance, a lot of people felt like Wonder Boy won the fight. On top of that, Darren Till missed weight. So that even takes away from his case even more. If you want to say something about Tyron Woodley being a boring fighter, then that hurts Darren Till's case. The fact that he missed weight, the fact that a lot of people feel like Wonder Boy won. There's a lot of reasons you could say Darren Till doesn't deserve a title shot here. And he himself said it. Darren Till came out after the fight and said, give the shot to Wonder Boy. I'll fight all these welterweights. I'll fight another fight. Whenever I'm the champion, I'm going to have to fight all these guys anyway. So Darren Till himself has said he doesn't deserve the title shot. He missed weight. Wasn't a decisive win. So there's many reasons Darren Till could not get this title shot. And if that is the case, who's open? Well, we got one guy who just came out and said he'd fight any title for any weight class, any title. And that just happens to be our dog, Nick Diaz. This is what Nick Diaz said after Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier, UFC 226 debacle. Sick of all this baddest man on the planet BS. I'll fight for any title at any weight. Now, I could stop right there because that's all we need to see. I'll fight for any title at any weight. And I brought this up. I said, this is awfully convenient for Nick Diaz. We've already got an interim welterweight champion. So now that you're saying you'll fight for any title at any weight, it's like, well, you can't fight Woodley. He's got to fight Covington. Whitaker and Gastelum are coaching the Ultimate Fighter and fighting each other. Now you can't fight for the middleweight belt because that's going to Gastelum. Cormier's got 2 belts. He's tying up the light heavyweight division. They already want one of those guys fighting. Gustafsson wants that title shot. Brock Lesnar's already going to be fighting for the next heavyweight title shot. So it was just convenient for Nick Diaz to say he'll fight for any title at any weight when there was no title shot available. But whoa, Colby Covington's out. We need a title fight. I think there's only one person available if we look at all the other options. That's Nick Diaz. Now he's got that court situation going on, but would he have called out Daniel Cormier and said he'll fight any champion at any weight class if he thought he couldn't fight because of that court situation? I don't think so. So right now would be the perfect time for Tyron Woodley if he wanted to call Nick Diaz's bluff and see if he's bluffing. Either Nick Diaz is going to show everyone he's bluffing right here if Tyron Woodley calls him out and that he really doesn't want no smoke, because that's what it would look like to me. If Nick Diaz came out last week and said I'll fight any champion at any weight class and he's talking about Daniel Cormier at fucking heavyweight, then there's no reason you would not take a fight with Tyron Woodley, who doesn't have an opponent now. There's no great clear-cut contender at welterweight, not one. Usman hurt hands. He beat Maia, who just lost to Covington. Covington must be injured. He's not his interim title fight. It's looking like he's injured or whatever situation. He's out. Darren Till missed weight, controversial decision, not the most entertaining performance. So now would be the perfect time for a money fight to come back and get this title shot. But we'll see what happens. I honestly, hopefully Tyron Woodley considers this, because if not, I honestly don't know if we're going to hear about Nick Diaz speaking up now. Do you think Nick Diaz is going to come out now? Hey, I just said I would fight for a title shot. Nick Diaz should have already spoke up. I'll go to his Instagram right after this video. He just said last week or the week before he'll fight any champion at any weight class. So let's go see if he's keeping that same energy now that Tyron Woodley needs a fight. Because this isn't just a money fight for Woodley. This fight has some rivalry to it. Tyron Woodley's a guy that's called out both Diaz brothers. Wanted to fight Nick Diaz, I believe, since Strikeforce. Since before they were in the UFC, Tyron Woodley was showing up at Nick Diaz press conferences trying to get this fight. So now, this fight might have just fell into Tyron Woodley's hands if he realized it. I didn't even think about this till my guy, that weird guy, pointed out in the live stream. I wasn't considering Nick Diaz. But after he brought up the name Nick Diaz, that's all I want to hear about. He just called out Daniel Cormier, and he talked about how Daniel Cormier is not an exciting fighter and all of this stuff because he didn't fight Anderson Silva the way he fought him. Dude, we're not the same fighter. Of course we're not going to fight the same style of fight. But I knocked out Stipe. I submitted Rumble twice. I submitted Ozdemir. I didn't just fucking wrestle. Fuck none of those guys. So how am I a boring fighter and I'm finishing everyone except for Silva? So for Nick Diaz to call out Daniel Cormier, I already kind of felt like it was a little out of line and also a little convenient that there's no title fights available. So now the pressure in my mind is on Nick Diaz to see if he's really about that any weight, any title fight talk, or if it was just because it sounded good and he knew nobody was going to take the fight, which would be unfortunate because Nick Diaz, you know, they're the don't be scared, homie. And this would be the perfect time. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. This would be the perfect time for Tyron Woodley to say, hey, Nick Diaz, I need an opponent. Don't be scared, homie. What did you just say last week? And then if Nick Diaz turned down the fight, then I'm open to the Darren Till fight. Because I'm a huge fan of Darren Till. But right now, I just understand why he might not get the next title fight. And if there's no other available contenders, then all right, give it to Till. But if we got Nick Diaz wanting any title fight, and the UFC's already bringing back Brock Lesnar and CM Punk, and let's get it. Nick Diaz versus Tyron Woodley. I'm not going to lie. It's a fight that I've been wanting to see for a long time now. So maybe we'll get to see it, maybe not. With that being said, it is what it is. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to say shout out to my dog, yanking my dandy doodle. Make sure you guys check out the video description if you enjoyed this video. We've got a startup fund going right now, and my guy yanking my dandy doodle said he'll match every single dollar for the next week that's donated to the channel as we attempt to move to a better studio and also just get better equipment to make the channel that much better. So if that happens, that'd be super dope. So we're going to skip the outro. Just make sure you check the video description box and go check out that full-time MMA shoey startup. Because also, if we can hit our goal, we're going to be hitting the shoey live during a fight companion or just during our first show from the new place. So that would be super dope. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. Who do you think Woodley should fight next? Diaz or Till? And give me your reason as well. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOG.